Greg Garrett, please come forward. We don't know if you noticed that this honoree did not arrive by car. And he made a point of not selecting seafood for his dinner choice tonight.
I would have served oysters.
Based on his youthful experiences, Greg has invested himself in creating better situations for young people, not only in our immediate community, but also internationally. You may know him through Orphan Helpers, or Youth Challenge, or Operation Breaking Through, or any number of other projects. Greg says, start small, stick with it, and you will see amazing results. For his inspiration, vision, and leadership, we are pleased to honor Greg Garrett with the 2012 Virginia Center for Inclusive Communities Humanitarian Award.
Thank you for the extra comments there, Don. I appreciate that very much. This award is quite an honor, and it really has allowed me over the last couple of months to reflect on just how I arrived at this podium in front of you tonight. And one thing that is abundantly clear to me is that it's really not about me. It is really not about me, and it's really not about anything that I really have done as I look back. I look back at the people that have invested their life in me. You know, Hillary Clinton wrote a book based on an old African proverb, and y'all probably know what that is, and it takes a village to raise a child. You see, I was a bad kid. Now, Gordon Gentry made me promise that I wouldn't go into but so much detail. He nominated me, and I don't think he wants to be embarrassed by all of my background. But I was a bad kid, and I mean, just a brief synopsis: at 6, I was caught shoplifting the first time. At 11, I was arrested the first time at 2 o'clock in the morning driving my grandmother's 1954 Chevrolet. And then as I escalated in my crime spree, at 15, I actually was in court for grand larceny. So it got serious. I was a bad kid. I don't say that jokingly and lightly. And so it is really through the power of people believing in me and pouring their life in me, as well as the power of God, that changed me through the influence of many others. I would not be here today without a number of people, and I want to mention many of them tonight. First, my dad. My dad was a good man. He died when I was 19, but one thing he instilled in me is to look out for the underdog. And if I came home with a black eye, he would say, "Were you taken up for somebody?" And if I wasn't, I was in trouble. If I was, he said, "Way to go, son. What'd you do to them?" My mother. Many of you probably have a mother like this, but I have a mother that's absolutely stood with me on every single thing I've ever done, and she's here with me tonight, and I'm just so honored to have a mother that has always been there for me. I look back, and as I looked at the inclusiveness of this group, and I thought about my first grass cutting job. I cut grass as a kid. My first grass cutting job was Mr. Goldstein. He ran a furniture store down the street, and he lived across the street from me. Y'all probably did business with Mr. Goldstein. Well, he gave me my first grass cutting job, and it was $1.75 to cut a $1 yard. And I remember his generosity. Joe Drury. I was 11 years old, and I was in Joe Drury's car. He had just moved into the neighborhood, and I was going to the sailing program at the Hampton Yacht Club with my brother and his stepson in the front seat. And I referred to an African American that at the time by a word that we used back then as white people, and I referred to an African American as a nigger. Joe Drury stopped the car. Joe Drury looked back at me, and Joe Drury said, "Young man, I don't ever want to hear that word come out of your mouth again." And I'd never heard, a white man had never said that to me. There had never been anything wrong with saying that word until that man stood up and said to me and corrected me and said, "I don't ever want to hear that word come out of your mouth again." Thelma Kaiser. Some people need two mothers. Thelma Kaiser had 4 sons of her own, and she took me in as her 5th, and I was her 5th son, and she's here tonight. She was the mother and is the mother of my best friend from 1st grade. And she really loved me as a second mother and prayed for me many times. Judge Durden. I asked Judge Durden, Nelson Durden, to come tonight. Judge Durden was the judge that I went before when I was 15, and he said, "Son, come back in here in a year, and if you've kept your nose clean, I'm going to dismiss these charges." He couldn't make it tonight, but I talked to him about this, and it made me reflect and go back and talk to some of these folks. Gilly Gillette. Gilly Gillette's widow is here tonight. I asked her to come. I was 15 years old when I started cutting firewood, and I could walk into Gillette's Lawn and Garden and walk out with any chainsaw, any piece of equipment that he had in the store. I didn't sign anything, I didn't do anything. I walked in, I walked out, and he just let me pay as I could pay as I went along. And that the belief in me for a man like that, a businessman in the community like that, meant a lot to me. Dick Hopkins. Dick Hopkins' son, Charles, is here tonight. I asked him to come. When I started my tree service and I transitioned from cutting firewood to actually doing tree business at 16 years old, I bought an old 1960 flatbed pickup truck, and within a week the engine blew. I didn't have any money. I went into Dick Hopkins. Somebody said he was a good man. I didn't know him. Not really. I'd met him before. And I went in and had that truck, and I just kind of was sheepishly, and I said, "I got this tree business, and I know I can make money, and I know I can pull this thing together, and I got this truck, and it doesn't work." And somebody said, "I need an engine." Mr. Hopkins looked at me and said, looked over at somebody else beside him and said, "Put an engine in that boy's truck." And it was done. Over the last 2 or 3 months later, I paid him from time to time until I got him paid. Coach Mike Smith and his wife Lisa, I've asked them to come tonight, and they're here tonight. These are people that are part of the village that helped to raise me. Coach Mike Smith put me on the varsity football team as a 10th grader. I didn't deserve to be on the varsity football team. We had incredible football players, and he put me on the varsity football team and made me the backup center. And then when I was 19 and my father died and I came out of college and got in the real estate business, Mike Smith loaned me the money to buy my first house down on Claremont Avenue. Mike, you'll never know how you believing in me had an impact on me. Ann Kilgore, the mayor of Hampton. When I was in high school, I was involved in the student government. And Ann Kilgore worked with me, and we all became that close with a 4-3 vote with Ann's help to get a voting paid student on the school board. And when it failed, she said, "If you will stay here and go to school, we have a school board appointment coming up in June." I was 18 years old, and she would have given me that. She was going to offered me the school board appointment. And I went to school at the University of Richmond and couldn't take it. But she believed in me. Ashby Kilgore is here tonight. Ashby, your mother had a big impact on my life. You recognize the person there, Jimmy, beside her? Jimmy Easton standing beside Ann Kilgore. Coach Mann, Alvis Mann and Carol are here tonight. As a student leader, Alvis Mann inspired me probably more than anybody else. He was not the student, he was not the school's SCA sponsor or anybody else. He was my tennis coach, he was an assistant football coach, he was an art teacher, and I didn't take art. But he gave me ideas and inspiration, just whispering in my ear, and it helped me to be a leader, a student leader at Hampton High School. Now, and then he and his wife have gone on to do business with me and my real estate company, and his uncles and his aunts and both of his daughters, and buying and selling, and it's been an incredible relationship. Mr. Bill Lovett was going to come tonight. He was my principal. Bill Lovett believed in me in a way that I could never imagine. As a student leader, he gave me an office at Hampton High School. As a student leader, he gave me great flexibility to lead the students there at Hampton High School. When I first got married and brought my bride up here from North Carolina, I moved in to a gentleman that I thought was a little bit unusual. He was gay. And I've asked Jerry Pierpont to come tonight, and he's a guest with us here tonight. Jerry, you were my first gay friend. I'd met gay people before and thought it was kind of weird. And I want to tell you that you were one of the best neighbors and have been one of the best neighbors I've ever had in my life, and one of the best friends through the years. Maurice Block. As I said, my dad died when I was 19. Maurice Block was about a 4'11" man of Jewish faith that lived across the street from us when we lived next door to Jerry. Maurice Block became the grandfather that those boys needed. My sons, I was working a lot, my sons really needed a grandfather. And this man who never had any sons, that had 3 daughters and they were grown and gone, this man became the grandfather. I wish he was still here with us. He's been dead a long time. Miss Jessie Ratley, as a young man in my 20s. Miss Jessie Ratley, and Robin is here tonight. I asked her to come in honor of her mother. Jessie Ratley, the mayor of Newport News, appointed me when I was about 23 years old to her cabinet. She created a cabinet of people to work with her in the city of Newport News. And her belief in me, Robin, had a huge impact on me as a young man. I asked Dwight West to come here tonight in honor of his father, Caleb. In my 20s, I had a gentleman at the IRS look at me and say, Mr. Garrett, when I finish with you, you're going to be selling used cars. And as a young man, as a young businessman in my 20s, that was it was pretty impactful for me. When I left there, I went and saw Mr. Caleb West, who I barely knew, but he had been a friend of my father's. And Dwight, I'll never forget that he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, I'll stand with you. And he did. Along with the last gentleman that I'll mention tonight, who couldn't be here tonight, that just turned 90 years old, and that's Doris Rosser, another man that has been a mentor to me, and a man that stood with me during that time, and a man that has really been a mentor, and not just a mentor, but really an inspiration that from little Newport News, Hampton, Virginia, that a ministry could be started that could have worldwide impact. I'm blessed to be a part now of 2 villages, one in El Salvador and Honduras, and now Panama, and the other one here on the peninsula. And it's an incredible blessing to be a part of that. I'd like for my son Adam, my daughter Sarah Catherine, my nephew Benjamin, all to stand up. I'd like for my friends Andrew, Adrian, Kyle, Dominique, Steve, Ryan to stand up. I brought you here tonight not to brag or to show off, because I'm very, very clear in my understanding that this is not about me. It's about these people that I've just talked about that came before me and invested in my life. It is my hope, it is my expectation, it is my belief that you guys will stand up here 20, 30 years from now and receive this award, and I will be one of the old guys out here in the audience cheering you on. God bless you.